We have breaking political news out of the United States. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham has died. His office says he passed away following a brief and sudden illness. Graham was on a visit to Ukraine on Friday, where he met with President Zelensky. He was scheduled to appear on NBC News Meet the Press today. The longtime South Carolina politician was elected to the House in 1994 and the Senate in 2002. He was running for re-election this year. In a Truth Social post, President Donald Trump called Graham one of the greatest people and senators he has ever known. Lindsey Graham was 71. Just days after meeting with Graham in Kyiv, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky expressed his condolences on social media, saying he was, quote, deeply saddened by Graham's passing and that he was a, quote, true defender of freedom and the values that make our world safer. Israeli President Isaac Herzog also paid tribute to Graham. In a video statement, he called the senator, quote, a dear friend and a great American patriot. He said Graham was a, quote, beacon of moral clarity and one of Israel's greatest friends and allies in the U.S. Graham was a strong supporter of Israel and supported the war against Iran. For more on this, let's bring in Frank Sesno. He is a former CNN Washington bureau chief and a professor of the School of Media and Public Affairs at George Washington University, joining us this morning from Beverly, Massachusetts. Thanks so much for talking to us this morning.
My pleasure to be with you.
So this is a very sudden death. So many people taken by surprise by this announcement today. What went through your mind when you first heard about Lindsey Graham's passing?
So much. I mean, I've known Lindsey Graham. I've interviewed him many times during my years at CNN and seen him since. And he's an enormously influential player in the Republican Party, in the U.S. Senate, and in the United States. He has a very close and very complex relationship with Donald Trump. He is a foreign policy hawk in many ways. As you pointed out, he was literally just in Ukraine. And he's been a very active member of the Senate. Again, as you pointed out, he was about to be today on Meet the Press. So a death like this, so sudden, so unexpected, of such an influential player at such a polarized and dramatic time in American politics, leaves an enormous void and a lot of questions.
In your opinion, what legacy does Graham leave behind?
That's a really interesting question, because there really have been two Lindsey Grahams. Lindsey Graham came out of the school of John McCain, the late senator of Arizona, who was a very independent Republican and stood up to the party and others very much on principle. Lindsey Graham campaigned against Donald Trump in 2016. In fact, Graham said at the time that Donald Trump would essentially destroy the Republican Party. And yet Graham became a great Trump whisperer and confidant. So I think the legacy he's going to leave is certainly one of influence. He was very influential in the Senate Judiciary Committee in getting conservative justices confirmed to the Supreme Court and bringing Donald Trump that conservative majority that's been so influential. That's going to be a strong legacy. Strong hawk on foreign policy, Ukraine and other things, although those positions have been really weakened by Trump. So that legacy will be less clear, but what he stood for will be. And then part of his legacy is going to be the political flip that he did, essentially, when he went from sort of a very pro-McCain independent voice to one that very much aligned with Donald Trump and the MAGA movement.
What do you think comes next? How will this affect the Republican Party?
That's a great question, because it's not only John McCain, who's tragically and very suddenly died here, but Mitch McConnell, the former Republican majority leader in the Senate, is hospitalized, and we've heard nothing from him and from his team in terms of what's really happening there. And we're heading toward midterms, and the Democrats have been feeling relatively bullish about the prospects of flipping the Senate. So there are a lot of questions. There will be a reappointment. The governor of South Carolina will reappoint Graham's successor. But all these political elements stay very much up in the air, and even more of a question now, even more uncertainty brought to American politics.
What would that uncertainty mean for President Trump losing these strong voices of support?
Well, it's a question as to whether more will peel away. We've started to see some of that with some of the moves that Trump has made recently, and certainly the war in Iran and other things has aggravated that. I think it also raises a question as to how they position themselves as a party and as individual candidates going into the midterms, because that's even more uncertain as well. And American, U.S. attitudes towards the economy continue to be very sour, and Donald Trump's numbers are quite weak. So how that affects Trump, he needs some budget action soon, because we're going to be back in crisis mode with budgets and potential shutdowns. So these numbers really matter, and they're very, very close.
Graham had never been really facing strong opposition during his time in office. He was, of course, a senator for more than 20 years. How do you think his death could affect the upcoming midterm elections?
Well, that is I don't think his death in the state of South Carolina is going to suddenly throw South Carolina into play. That's a solid red state, and the governor will reappoint an interim senator, and then they'll have elections. And I don't think that that's a Democratic flip state. But to the extent that money needs to be spent there to introduce new candidates, to the extent that it raises more conversation, broadly speaking, about the upheaval in the Senate, and makes it potentially more credible as a political issue, a campaign issue, that the Democrats could have a wave, there could be some effect. But I don't think that Graham's death by itself really changes the equation very much on whether the Democrats overall are going to be able to flip the Senate, or how vulnerable Republicans are.
Former CNN Washington Bureau Chief Frank Sesno, thank you so much for talking to us this morning.
My pleasure.